Hello guys, welcome to the second week on Design Foundations. In this week we will talk about contrast and proportion. So the first things we'll dive into is contrast, and we'll discuss what is the definition of contrast, and we'll talk about examples of contrast. So let's jump into it and see exactly what's up. Contrast refers to the distinct differences between various elements within a design, which serves to make them stand out from one another. So it's a simple idea of distinction between either positive versus negatives, big versus small. Let's say a contrast in terms of colors. You got, for example, complementary color is a type of contrast. We have value type of contrast, and so on and so forth. And here we got also some examples of contrast that we're going to talk about. One of them is size contrast. This refers to the difference in size between elements within a design, such as using large and small text, large and small objects, large and small components, etc. So it can be attributed, the size contrast, to many areas. Okay, so it's not just one thing or the other. In our example, we'll talk about in our size contrast example, we'll have an example of big versus small, components or objects in the composition. On color contrast, this refers to the difference in color between elements within a design, such as using light and dark colors. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple. You have colors that are brighter, colors that are darker, and it's quite simple to grasp, and that's color contrast. Value contrast, this refers to the difference in brightness or darkness between elements within a design, such as using light and dark shades of the same color. So this actually is like the manipulation of contrast through value. That is what we're going to pay attention to. Texture contrast, this refers to the difference in texture between elements within a design, such as using smooth and rough surfaces. Here we have a clear representation of the types of contrast that we talked about, and we have the size contrast, color contrast, value contrast, and texture contrast. And now we're going to move to the next part, where we're going to talk about the definition of why is contrast important as a principle, and we'll define that. And as you guys can see, contrast is one of the most important principles in design. It is vastly used throughout many areas in design. Contrast is an area where humans are attracted naturally, simply because we're visual beings. And that is I couldn't emphasize that more. As human beings, we definitely have this type of thing where we create, we see something that is contrasting with another. That's interesting off the bat. From a scientific standpoint, we're wired to notice contrast across the board. From strong saturated colors, for example, in the wilderness, we see, contrasting colors on animals. We kind of stay away from that because we know it's kind of dangerous or poisonous. To light and dark, which reveals an area or volume, and so on and so forth. So for example, when you play a game, you have a lit area that is specifically lit that creates contrast. Therefore, you're attracted to go explore that area. There's simple things that us humans are attracted to in terms of contrast, and we notice it right away. It's important to understand that contrast is found in conjunction with other principles of design. It simply means that contrast overlaps with many other principles we find in design as we explore this topic. And you guys will notice across the board that we'll explore this topic thoroughly.